I will have you know, Mike, that I was trying to lift my leg when you did that.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of the 5280 podcast on the MHRT Network. I am your host, Mundungus Creevy, alongside my co-hosts, as always, Cameron Parker, Glenn Hauser, and Nip Slip Madrid. How's everybody doing?
I like Frogger Madrid better.
Frogger Madrid is good. Now, let me just throw out there as a disclaimer. Like, Gage is not on camera because the titties are hanging out, and he doesn't want to be on camera right now. So,
he's correct. He is 100% correct about that.
I'm not wrong.
Instant demonetization, baby.
I'm hoping
you might want to get. So Gage got injured the other day and had a bad broken leg and had surgery. So that's why he's really off.
Yeah.
Sure.
This guy's a gamer, though. He's a gamer. He was recording in the hospital. I mean, it was unbelievable.
Got to do what you got to do, man. Keep your sanity and all that stuff. That was something that was really, really, I felt like a badass thing to do, to be honest. Like, it was an experience that I certainly don't want to relive again, but I just want to say I'm very grateful to everybody who has reached out, who has commented on my videos, who has reached out on Twitter. All of that love and support does not go unnoticed. I am extraordinarily humbled and grateful. And yeah, man, thank you guys so much for all the love and support.
It's a boss move to have you here. I must say, I mean, it's one thing to, maybe be sick a few times and, miss a few shows and, but it's another thing to have a complete boss move and, completely, appear when literally it feels like you could have just taken the show off and relaxed. So,
hey man, anything from the game of football.
Like, I'm waiting to meet the guy that like snaps his leg in half and is like, let's do it again. That's fun. Yeah.
But
sorry, I guess that's me. Sorry, I'm trying to do. So
Captain Creevy is steering us into the iceberg,
I know, right? Sorry. So there are some things that are going on. We just had a press conference from Sean Payton. Got some answers on some things. Got some questions on some things. Cecil Lamby made himself look like a moron. And then after we talk about all that, we're gonna build an all-star Broncos team. So we're gonna go through all the eras of Broncos football, and we're gonna build the best Broncos team ever. So that should be fun. I was gonna have a graphic, but I was busy and forgot. So
the real question there is whether or not Glenn actually ponies up, and he actually puts Steve Watson on the all-time team. That's really the thing that I'm really looking forward here in terms of the all-time team.
We'll see.
Clearly, because I was going to say, clearly, whenever the throwback uniforms drop, Glenn doesn't want me to get a Steve Watson uniform because, so I mean, I'm at least now waiting for the opportunity now with this all-time team for him to really, get that bias out and really, push the Steve.
I can step it up. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm curious how much the nominations are going to differ between me, the youngest, and Glenn, the oldest.
Well, and I have like, so I went
like Bronco Nagurski.
I went through a bunch of different like articles about this and players and positions, and I found I think I have like the 2 or 3 or 1 person depending on position of who I would put, and then I have like a list of 5 or 7 other optional names that we can go through. If there's somebody else you want to add in, we can do that. But it should be fun. But I do want to kick this thing off with the press conference. I had a special request from Glenn to describe a Sean Payton press conference.
Be careful, though. It's spicy.
There you go. Throw it out there for you.
That thing is meme gold.
It really is. But we did have Sean Payton talking about a lot of different things. Talked about quarterback competition, not caring about what Vegas says as far as like betting on wins. Cortland Sutton expected to be on the field. Esme and Dulcich are back. You guys just kind of want to break down everything you talked about and go from there?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is obviously the quarterback competition, because that's going to be the biggest storyline as we go throughout training camp is who is the leader of the clubhouse in the quarterback competition. As we went through OTAs and as we went through minicamp, it seemed that Jarrett Stidham had the greatest grasp on the offense, but that's not to say Bo Nix wasn't too far behind. At this point in time, Zach Wilson is kind of the clear-cut third. You don't want to tell that to Sean Payton, though. As far as Sean Payton is at least publicly concerned, it's still an open competition that everybody's going to have a fair shot to win, and it's going to be all about finding that guy who's going to be the starter week 1 up in Seattle. The Broncos are going to go through the motions. They're going to give this every chance possible to organically work itself out. That's the term Sean Payton used, was organically work itself out. And at the end of the day, us fans and media can kind of speculate as to what direction things are going to go, but Sean Payton is going to, at least for the first week, mix up the rotations just like he did throughout OTAs and minicamp, give every guy basically an equal amount of snaps, but Sean also said that that's not going to last forever, and eventually we're going to whittle things down to probably a 2-man race and then a 1-man winner.
Right. Well, and I think that it's a nice callback to when, you mentioning that about how Sean, he had a general idea. We don't know what that is, but he had a general idea of when he had a finalization of when that quarterback starter was going to end up being announced. But I think that just the way that he went about it today is like, it's what you should expect, right? I mean, like, it's doing a good service to every single person within that room. Training camp obviously is just getting ready to be underway here this week, and you want to make sure you are giving about as much equal, ample amount of reps and opportunities for every single person that's in that room, whether they deserve it or not. They want to make sure that they also try their best to earn that spot, and I think that that's the best way to describe that. And I think that certainly it seems like the fans and media would certainly get the feeling that Bo Nix is going to end up being your week 1 starter, but things can change. I mean, there's that very famous quote from draft day, which is, we live in a completely different world than we did 5 minutes ago, and that could be the case with this quarterback, circus, if you will, with who's going to be starting. It could be Jarrett Stidham being your week 1 starter. It would be a bit of a travesty to a certain degree with Bo Nix not starting there, but I mean, still, I just think that it's doing a very good service to every single person that's a member of that quarterback room, that they have a chance to really compete for that quarterback 1.
And also, it's so important for the Broncos to have a good start to the season. They cannot lose week 1. They have a very winnable game at home week 2 against Russ and the Steelers, and so if Nix is not up to speed, I could totally see him not being the starter, just to give us our best opportunity to start to roll off a couple quick wins right off the bat, instead of potentially sacrificing the season, early on with someone who's not ready. That being said, is one of the things that Sean did mention, is that Bo is a quick study, and so he doesn't seem all too concerned about him mastering this offense in short order.
And at the end of the day, Bo is already doing a lot of the stuff that the Broncos are asking from him in terms of managing the line of scrimmage, taking command of the huddle, enunciating the play calls to where everybody can clearly understand it, using the cadence at the line of scrimmage, identifying the Mike linebacker, recognizing pre- and post-snap coverages. At the end of the day, as long as Bo Nix has that down, then he should have the starting job in his hands, because he can go out and learn on the fly, throw an interception. That's okay, because that's just a learning opportunity. If he goes out there and has some on-field struggles, I think we're okay with going through the motion of that. But again, like we had also mentioned earlier, Sean Payton may be like, all right, I want to be more patient with this, because I want to give this team the best chance to win right now of the 52 other guys on the roster.
Yeah, and I think that even further to that, I think back to when, I don't think there's a wrong way to certainly go about it, but I just think that when you do the dirty work, when you continue to be a good study person of the playbook and everything, it really brings out a lot of it, and you help yourself even more. And I think back to when Locke was drafted, and he came in, and he talked about how he wanted to be a really good teammate first, right? And he wanted to be a really good teammate first, and that's not a wrong answer by any means. And I think that when you do the teammate aspect of it first, and then you really start to realize the personality traits of who they are as a player, which is soaking up the playbook, a quick processor, everything that we have been mentioning, Gage mentioned there, and even in other shows we've been mentioning about Bo, about how he is that quick processor, how quick he's able to analyze a playbook, and how quick he's even been from just simply rookie OTAs to now in Bronco training camp. I think is actually light years to where things have been, even from the beginning of when he was drafted. And so, and even you circle back to where Sean really never. It was not the Drake May situation with Gerard Mayo in New England. I mean, he was very much glowing about Knicks even from that point on. So it's been nothing about positive feedback with Knicks since he's been a Bronco. And so things are definitely trending in that direction. But yeah, absolutely. Competition is going to end up being the one that really seals it for Knicks. And I think the one area I would probably circle a little bit, if I would, and this may be jumping the gun a little bit, but would be those joint practices with the Packers. I mean, those are going to be being the ones where it's not preseason, but you're going to be going up against the other competition, the other teams, if you will, of the NFL. And so I think if Bo really separates himself against a rather decent enough and good defense with the Green Bay Packers, I think you might see some separation there with Bo as things continue a bit up that depth chart.
And I know people said that some people thought that he was a little reach at 12, but to me, one of the most appealing facts of Bo Nix is that he had over 60 starts in his college career, and he started for Auburn, for Oregon, against top competition in both the SEC and in the Pac-12. So the experience that he brings, he wasn't just an 8-game starter, a 10-game starter, 12-game starter. He wasn't just that. I mean, 61 starts, I believe, was the actual number. That is something that you cannot replace experience. And so I feel like he's really coming into this with a big leg up over some of the other drafted quarterbacks.
Yeah. And obviously it's a regurgitated point, but there was a reason why all of us were saying just because some of the media were thinking he's QB6 doesn't mean that he was Sean Payton's QB6, which clearly that ended up being, denounced, if you will, by Sean and everything. Like it was basically confirmed that he was their third quarterback, or the third quarterback on their board, basically behind Caleb and Jaden Daniels. Right. I mean, so like, and then at that point, it's like, that there was a reason why they stayed put, and it was the teams that were behind him. It was the teams that were calling and moving and wanted to move up. It was possibly the team that was in division that were probably wanting to strongly consider Bo Nix maybe as well. So it's just like when all things really come together and really you start looking at it through not the orange, orange colored lens, if you will, you really start to understand that, wow, this Bo Nix situation might actually end up being maybe one of the better situations for really any rookie quarterback in the NFL right now.
And now I don't know if you guys know this. I think it was a secret that was held all offseason. But when you think of the best player on the Broncos, most of us think like Pat Surtain. Most of us think like Quinn Miners. Nope, it's Lucas Kroll. Just so you know.
We've been completely bamboozled. It is actually Lucas Kroll.
Listen, in Cecil's defense right there, the way he worded the question was, who was the best player throughout the offseason, just in terms of like the top performer in camp and in mini camp and in OTAs, and he had been there throughout that process, and at least you could see that Lucas Kroll had taken significant strides. So I can understand where Cecil was coming from asking that question. But as Sean very ruthlessly pointed out, of course, Lucas Kroll's not the best player on the Broncos. Immediately, you objectively think of Pat Surtain and Quinn Miners. But listen, I love Cecil, one of my mentors, but dude got roasted by Sean, and I'm all here for it, man.
I mean, listen, no offense
Oh,
at all to Lucas Kroll,
No.
Yeah.
but no.
He is not Pastor Tan, and he is not Mr. Moneybags, Quinn Miners right now.
Oh, it's so
Yeah.
funny. And you could just tell like Sean in his mind was kept going back to the question.
Yeah.
Like it even when Woody I almost called him Woody Hayes, even when Woody Page started talking, and he just like and he just even seemed annoyed when he ended his press conference.
We will have to find that specific clip where Sean is just completely shaking his head, and we'll have to see if we can use that clip at all in various moments. As far as just the overall disgust, just that was very evident on his face.
You got to give Cecil credit though. Like he because he really did think that he was the best. My belief is that he was probably thinking like most improved.
Right.
But he just kept going. And he's like, well, if it's not him, who is it?
This is the only
guy
thing
that's wearing a tuxedo that just signed an $80 million contract. Like
right. This is the only thing I'm gonna give Cecil.
Absolute booty cheeks.
That's it. That's all we get.
Love you, Steve.
Yeah.
so good. All right.
Okay, just
Bye.
bye.
That
At least
I
he's
mean-
got his shirt on.
when you gotta go, you gotta go. I mean,
You gotta go. Anything else significant that he covered? I know I just closed it too.
Audric Estime.
yeah.
There you go.
Audric Estime. Obviously, Cortland Sutton was the other biggest one. He will report to camp. I know we spent a few shows talking about Cortland and will he report to camp or not. Another thing, even to that point, about even reporting to camp was Sean mentioned that there was no dialogue about a contract, but he will be there. About camp. So maybe some subtleties there as far as Cortland and truly the future in Denver there. But I thought that was one of the interesting parts was when he actually said no dialogue, but you can definitely bet that he will be there in camp.
Well, and I think that goes kind of to what we've been saying about the whole Cortland Sutton situation. It's not that he shouldn't get paid, but at the same time, you haven't really outplayed the contract you currently have. So it's not that we don't want him to get paid, but if you're going to get paid, like you're going to have to show
And the question
that
is,
you should get paid more.
And the question is, what is that level of pay? That's the ultimate. Yeah.
And is Denver willing to do it?
Right.
Well, and so that was another question that I had because we were so concerned about how many players are going to be up for big contracts next year. Obviously, Quinn Miners is now out of that. You already got it. You got PS2 coming up. But we have the cap space. Like we have a crap ton of cap space next year. So is it really that big of a concern?
Well, I think in regards to a move that happened today, I think the question is going to end up remaining what is going to happen with Garrett Bowles next year. And that is about the Christian Darrisaw contract that just went down today, which was 4 years and about 115 million. So close to, almost 30 a year, which is absurd. And there's no way Garrett Bowles is going to end up getting that kind of money. So, yeah.
You don't think so?
No.
30 million for Bowles? No.
For his age, absolutely not.
Okay.
Were you guys talking about Cortland Sutton?
Yes.
Initially or not? So Sean pretty much made it clear that they're not giving him a new contract. I mean, they asked him if they were talking to him, and he said, "Absolutely not." But he'll be here.
Yeah.
So that.
And I think that also speaks to kind of the solution that we've been proposing here on the channel of Cortland Sutton coming here and playing out that 1 year of his deal, and then basically shaving off the final year of his deal in 2025, cutting him because it'll be pretty cheap to do so, and then let him be a free agent and let some other team give him the contract that he's looking for.
Won't we be able to cut him next year without any money? I thought this year was like $2 million.
Yep.
And then next year would be nothing, right?
I would venture to guess it would be roughly the same thing. But yeah, if they moved on from him, the guaranteed money was still rather small that they would be getting, off of. So, and the thing is that like this, as much as we love, the leader type players and everything, like, you also have to call it for what it is, and that is, who's to say that someone's going to give Cortland Sutton that big contract, not the Broncos, right? So, and especially too, like, look at Justin Simmons. We love Justin, and I think that based on Stearns possibly being on the PUP list, there's at least initially, there's at least a thought you could entertain about, like, hey, let's bring Justin back. That's not gonna happen, but that's obviously an entertaining thought. But like, he's still out there. That's the point. Like, he's still out there. So I mean, the idea that Cortland Sutton is going to possibly generate a lot of money and buzz for something that's going to end up being 20 to maybe 21 or 22 million a year, it's like, I would venture to guess that not many teams in the NFL right now are going to give him that kind of contract.
Not for his production, unfortunately.
Right.
Unless he goes out there and absolutely balls next year.
Right. That would be the only thing. We're the statistics of the past were in the past. So.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually ran when I ran out. I wanted to get the Mike Kliss book, Denver Broncos all-time All-Stars, best players at each position for the Orange and Blue as a reference. Mike had come on to promote that book when it first came out, so I wanted to make sure we gave a shout out since the topic at hand is
it's a good reference
in relation to that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which and to be fair, as the host, like, I'm supposed to tell everybody what the topic is. I didn't tell anybody anything.
You didn't.
I didn't tell nobody nothing.
I saw the headline. That was it.
Yep.
Yeah. That's all the warning they got. So you're welcome.
Well, fortunately, we know what we're talking about most of the time. So I think we'll be okay.
Allegedly.
I might throw Sam Hartman on that list just because.
He'll be a walk-on.
Hey, what did I tell you, man? Sam Hartman, future face of the UFL. He has been drafted by the Birmingham Stallions of the
Birmingham
UFL.
Stallions fan now. So how does that work though? Because he is under contract with the Commanders. He got a signing bonus. So how does that work?
Washington cuts him and he wants to go to the UFL. He can go to the UFL
he can't do both.
Birmingham. No.
Okay.
Think of it to a certain degree, almost like just a different way of like the G League, or like in the NBA, like in a sense, minus the playing part, but it's like they basically just own his rights.
Think about Bronny James. He's the Bronny James of the NFL.
Listen, once they drafted Bronny James in like the second round, I was done. I was like, nope. Nope.
See, I think Mike has the I Believe Mario T-shirt, and I think for the Birmingham team, it's going to say "My heart, HART, belongs to Sam."
But speaking of
in Birmingham,
Birmingham Sam.
Yeah, you go. My heart's in Birmingham.
But
the least successful merge of all time.
But speaking of UFL, obviously Blake Watson ended up getting signed or drafted. He's don't expect him to at least be with the UFL for at least
ever.
That's obviously a projection there. Omar Brown was drafted. Who knows? He might actually go to the UFL. There was another player
drafted.
Frank Crum was also taken. I think those were the three that were Bronco players that were at least selected, possibly about going to the UFL. So those are three players that the Broncos have rights to.
Well, and Lucas Kroll, because he can do everything.
Because he is the best player in the Broncos.
Good.
It was Frank Crum, but now it's Lucas Kroll.
Lucas Kroll will ever be known as the greatest Bronco of all time.
Pretty much.
You know how like they have like Aaron Gordon is Mr. Nugget. We could have Mr. Bronco, Lucas Kroll.
There's another shirt. Mr. Bronco, and then the face of Lucas Kroll on the back. We did just have three people put on the PUP, right? One was Caden Stearns, one was
Drew Sanders,
and the other one.
Turiel.
Yep. So they can come back whenever they are healthy, right? They're not limited on when they can come back.
Correct.
Okay. Anything
One
else?
other nugget from today was Peyton was asked about Uwazurike, and the Broncos do want him back. It's just a question of when he is going to be available
and whether or not will the NFL step in again, and that sort of thing. Yeah.
But that would be a nice surprise to have for the defensive line competition.
They just want to know if he can figure out how to make a fake account so that he can bet on stuff instead of his own.
I mean, let's just hope he can bet on himself
through a secret account. Cam. All right. Best Broncos team ever. Let's go ahead and dig into this. Now, there's a limit to how many you can have per position, and I'll tell you guys what that is as we go. So we'll start with the offense. Obviously, the first one is quarterback. I'll give you the options, but I'm pretty sure we all know where this is going.
It's clearly going Russell Wilson. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. Peyton Manning, Jake Plummer, Brian Greasy, Craig Morton, Frank Tripucka, John Elway, obviously. Now, I will say that I have a little caveat to this one. Obviously, when you think of the greatest Bronco ever, it's John Elway. But if you have an all-time team, Peyton Manning is a better quarterback. I'm just throwing that out there.
I agree.
Especially when you have like the best wide receivers of Broncos history, the best offensive linemen, running backs. Like, who would you rather have, Elway or Manning?
I mean, it just depends on how you look at it. I mean, I think that every single Denver Broncos Mount Rushmore that you have the conversation of, John Elway is for the most part always on there. I think my personal, Mount Rushmore has, Peyton on it, but that's talking about fan favorite. And you're talking about a guy who was born in 87 and basically grew up, with Peyton Manning at quarterback, with the Colts and everything. And so it's just like, I just think that and obviously I've seen, all 3 Super Bowls and everything. And, but I think objectively, if we're truly going to look at this objectively, I think it has to be John Elway. He created the entire, basically the quarterback culture of where things were just based on franchise quarterback. And, and there's a reason why specifically a lot of the NFL experts right now talk about who was Patrick Mahomes before Patrick Mahomes. It was John Elway. And so I think that based solely on objectivity and not opinion, I think you have to roll with John Elway and everything that he especially had in terms of impact, the amount of Super Bowls he went to, Super Bowls he won. He's also one of the very few teams that won back-to-back Super Bowl champions. Peyton didn't exactly do that. They could have, possibly, but it really didn't happen. So I think Elway is the quarterback here.
I think the best way to phrase it is Elway's the more physically talented player, but Peyton was the more cerebral player and the guy who could just absolutely pick your defense apart just purely with his mind. They're both 2 all-time great quarterbacks, and they both hold a special place in the hearts of Broncos country. I feel like John Elway as a quarterback sometimes gets looped in with John Elway, the GM, and that's something that I'm fighting not to do because John Elway obviously is still the most accomplished Denver Bronco of all time. He's the greatest Denver Bronco of all time, but Peyton Manning will always have a special place in Broncos country's heart. He's in the Ring of Fame. He's an ambassador for this team to this day. And I don't think that anybody would get upset with Peyton Manning being an honorable mention there.
Yeah, and like I said, if it was my opinion, I probably would roll with Peyton just because like I said, I grew up with him. But I think the right choice here, though, is you got to roll with Elway. But let's ask the elder of the group.
The elder, yeah. Clear cut. It's Elway, Peyton second. When John was traded to the Broncos, that was like one of those moments where you remembered where you were when you heard the news about that trade. I'm talking about for people that were okay. That people were around. Were you born? I can't remember. Yeah, it was pretty close.
I was not.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where we were rolling with the Matt Robinsons, the Craig Penroses, the Steve DeBergs of the world, and the Mark Hermans. I mean, he was part of the Elway trade. Like, think about that for a minute. And then John comes in there, and just changes everything in the trajectory of the franchise. Peyton, when he came, it was a pretty incredible process. And the fact that he couldn't even grip a ball, he wasn't even throwing much, if at all, at that point. It was really kind of a leap of faith on the Broncos, and and also and don't underestimate the fact that Elway got Peyton here. Right. And I think part of Elway's legacy was why Peyton had appeal to the Broncos. Also, a lot of people have had experiences with John Elway, and he wasn't the friendliest, but Peyton Manning is a much more likable guy. So it's understandable why they kind of run neck and neck in some of these polls or discussions, but right. It's got to be Elway and then Peyton.
I have to say this because it's actually current, but did anybody see the Twitter post today from the Pro Football Hall of Fame where they actually asked the very easy trivia question, which was, who was the team that drafted John Elway? Like they actually asked that today on the actual X, their Twitter handle, and I guess they're probably.
What's the answer to that?
The Baltimore Colts.
Yeah, I mean that's how many people say the Indianapolis Colts? How many people don't realize that they were still in Baltimore?
Right. Yeah, so I think it's crazy to a certain degree. Like there are people out there who don't know that answer that are
That's crazy.
That's insane.
Yeah.
All right, so we all agree John Elway is a starter. Paxton Lynch is the backup.
Yep.
That's the guy. That's my guy right there.
That's the guy. Okay. 2 running backs. I'm pretty sure this is probably we'll probably agree on the same ones, but I'll give the options. Otis Armstrong, Sammy Winder, Mike Anderson, Clinton Portis, CJ Anderson, Floyd Little, Terrell Davis.
Floyd Little and Terrell Davis, man, has to be.
No brainer.
Yeah, I think that I think it's definitely Terrell for running back 1, Mile High Salute for Terrell. I will say this: I think it's Floyd and Terrell. That said, though, we have talked so often about what if scenarios here on MHRT. I do wonder about the what if scenario had Clinton Portis remained a Denver Bronco, because if Clinton Portis remained a Denver Bronco, there is an argument to be made that he might be neck and neck with Terrell Davis in this list right now. And especially too, when you look at the actual trade itself of what got you Champ Bailey, that tells you enough about how good of a player Clinton Portis was with the Broncos. And so I think that it's a legit argument to be made with Portis possibly even being, maybe even running back 2 as far as just pure talent also. But I think just based on where we're with the 2 running backs, you got to roll with the 2 Hall of Famers, and Floyd Little, especially, who, we're talking about a running back that we talk about notoriety. If he was actually on a team like the Dallas Cowboys of his era, you're probably talking about a first ballot Hall of Famer, not, a player that is, going to be on the wait list basically for, so many years. And I think that, for Little, like, he would have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. This the way that he was as a player. And you think back to his career, even before he was even a member of the Broncos, he was a part of one of history's greatest running backs, schools, if you will, in college football history, with Syracuse. I mean, he came from, a program that had Jim Brown, right? Jim Brown, Floyd Little, and and Ernie Davis, right? Like those were the trio of backs. Like it was an absurd backfield that he came from with Syracuse. So to think about where it came from to where it was with the Broncos is a great story.
Yeah. So Biggie, I do want to clarify a little bit, right? So we're going with any player, any era when they were a Bronco. So that means it would be Jerry Rice as a Bronco, not Jerry Rice as the 49er on Bronco. So if you're going to pick Jerry Rice, then you have to go with how Jerry Rice played as a Bronco.
Okay, here's a Jerry Rice Bronco trivia question. What number did he wear in training camp?
14?
16?
Nope. He wore Eddie Royal's number.
Number 19.
Oh, 19.
Oh, I just missed the top part.
Yeah. But Glenn, real quick, as far as Terrell Davis and Floyd Little, if you have something to add on Floyd
No,
Little.
I think those are, you got to go. I mean, there are two Hall of Famers. So I think we check those boxes off.
Yeah, I think the offense is going to be pretty easy. I think it's when we get to the defense that it's going to be like, oh. All right, so wide receivers, we get 3. So I'll go through the list again, then we'll kind of go from there. Lionel Taylor is one. Rod Smith is one. Demaryius Thomas. And then you have Bob Scarpito. I don't know if I said that right. Al Denson, Haven Moses, Rick Upchurch, Steve Watson. Hey! Vance Johnson, Mark Jackson, Ed McCaffrey, Brandon Marshall, Emmanuel Sanders.
Okay, I'm going to give the floor to Glenn here so that he can provide his case for why Steve Watson is the wide receiver of this trio.
I mean, it's okay. Rod Smith is clearly a WR1 for the Broncos, but I do think Watson does deserve consideration. I think he should be a Ring of Famer, quite honestly. If you haven't seen him, definitely Google his statistics or Google some of his highlights. When you see the catches this guy made, he was Elway's favorite target when he first started. He was Craig Morton's favorite target to end his career. Led the NFL in touchdown receptions in 81.
13.
He had 13. He had 1,244 yards. Yeah, I mean,
I've got the stats right here. 353 receptions, 6,112 yards, 36 touchdowns. Led the league in touchdowns in 81 and made 1 Pro Bowl in 1981.
But just the catches and the impact that he made as a Bronco as an undrafted free agent is something special. I mean,
Be careful though. It's spicy.
but it really, I mean, he's not going to be top 3. So that's not nice. That's not nice.
I definitely
I was 10 years old. How dare you?
I think DT does deserve to be in the top 3.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that he was able to set all those records with Peyton Manning, he was Mr. Reliable here in Denver for all of those years. He's one of the most memorable Broncos of that Peyton Manning era. He's so beloved in this city. I think DT definitely deserves to be in the top 3.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows where I stand with Demaryius Thomas, and as far as Broncos history and everything, and like I think that you have to roll with Rod Smith and you have to roll with Demaryius Thomas, and I think that I don't think he's wide receiver 3, but I think that there is at least somewhat of an argument to be made about a what if scenario of, obviously. It sort of falls hand in hand with another player, but had Brandon Marshall stayed a Bronco his entire career, what would the career arc have been, with him possibly, being on this list of consideration, for, wide receiver 3 of the all-time greats for the Broncos. And I obviously don't think he's there, but he did set the NFL record for catches in a single game. In the regular season. So I think that, he's definitely he definitely has a lot of just dominant characteristics that when you saw Brendan, and I think that's where I think growing up in the fact of actually watching Brandon Marshall play made us appreciate guys like Demaryius Thomas just a bit more because of their play style and the way that they played. I think Ed McCaffrey is another really solid choice here. I think between, what all the toughness and everything that he displayed, even with the Broncos, I think is another viable candidate here. I really don't necessarily think that, you can go wrong with the top three of Lionel Taylor. I think that's probably the likely choice of Lionel Taylor and, Demaryius and Rod Smith. I think you obviously can't dismiss the three amigos either. You can't dismiss the three amigos, obviously, either.
Yeah, it came down to Lionel Taylor, Steve Watson, Ed McCaffrey, and I went with Taylor.
Yeah, I think
you guys can go with whoever.
Yeah, I harp on Watson not being in the Ring of Fame, but Ed McCaffrey's not in the Ring of Fame either. I mean, that's just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, the guy was tough as nails, had such impact on 2 Super Bowl teams. I mean, his career was essentially ended the night before September 11th on opening night for at the time it was Invesco Field at Mile High when his leg snapped on that Monday night game. But yeah, I think you got to go Lionel Taylor if we're going to be fair about historical impact and statistics, especially at a time where the passing game was not that huge and just looking at his let me pull him up real quick. 543 catches, 6,872 yards, and 44 touchdowns. It said that as of this book coming out, and I think it was last year, it said he still ranks 4th in team history with his catches and yards, and is tied for 5th in the touchdowns. And that's his last season was 1966. I mean, that's incredible.
Now, if it was my personal list, I don't know if I'd have Lionel Taylor on there. I think I'd rather have Emmanuel Sanders because I love Emmanuel Sanders. I love Emmanuel. And if you have Rod Smith, DT, and Emmanuel Sanders, you got 3 different types of receivers out there.
Yeah,
he was so great.
I will say though, I really respect the fact that KB put Brandon Lloyd in here because Brandon Lloyd had arguably one of the greatest seasons that is kind of underrated in terms of wide receivers, not just with the Broncos, but just in the NFL in general. The year that he had, I believe it was 2010, with the Broncos with Kyle Orton was an absolutely incredible year. He was basically OBJ before OBJ. The kind of circus catches that he was making, we talk about how much we appreciate the circus catches that Cortland Sutton makes on a daily basis. I guarantee you the catches Lloyd was making were 10 times better than what Sutton was making on a regular basis. And Sutton is great in his own right with those 50-50 catches, but Lloyd, in my opinion, put together arguably one of the most underrated NFL wide receiver seasons of all time.
I would agree with that. His highlight reel is unreal. I mean, just what he's, you mentioned Kyle Orton. He should have sent him a big Christmas gift because he was able to, he caught so many wild passes and in crazy spots. Brandon Lloyd was just awesome.
So next we go to tight end. We get one. I think this is pretty obvious. It's got to be the GOAT, Virgil Green. No, Shannon Sharp.
Maybe Lucas Kroll.
Yeah, it's got to be Lucas
Kroll.
Obvious.
There we go.
Oh, obvious.
Eric Decker was legit too.
Definitely also deserves some love.
Just not on the Jets. Shannon Sharp. I don't think there's any.
Eric Decker was on the male model Denver Broncos Mount Rushmore.
Then you have Eric Decker and Sam Hartman as quarterback. Woo!
Whoa.
There it is.
I'm going to be a male cheerleader for the Broncos. Buddy.
I got to say, KB's got a point. Vernon Davis, man. He's got a point.
Yeah.
We'd be remiss. I mean, Shannon Sharp is the obvious choice, but we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Riley Odoms as somebody that deserves some recognition. He's finally going in the Ring of Fame after all these years. I mean, I think he's in his early 70s now, and I mean, this is a guy. If you've never seen and Riley Odom's highlights. I mean, oh my gosh. If you watch him and then picture him in today's game, what he could do with these quarterbacks and with his size would have been just absolutely spectacular.
So let me go through the honorable mentions just so we know who's on there. Riley Odoms was on there. If it wasn't for Sharp, he would have been the guy. Clarence K, Dwayne Carswell, and Julius Thomas.
Ooh, I'm interesting. Julius is on there.
Yeah.
Orange Julius.
Statistically, he was
Orange
the
Julius.
5th ranked tight end in Broncos history.
Yeah. Clarence K, he's one of those that, what could have been. He had a number of drug suspensions back in the 80s, but one of those guys that was a reliable target for John Elway when he was playing.
I think one guy that is worth mentioning is Daniel Fells, the very reliable target of Tim Tebow in the 2011. Matt, I'm joking. I am absolutely.
We're just letting you go.
I'm absolutely joking. But Daniel Graham, obviously, he was the
Cecil Parker over here.
Yeah.
Tony Scheffler.
Tony Scheffler, Tony Scheffler, man. We talked about what could have been that offense of what could have been. Was it 2006, right? 2006. What could have been with Cutler, Marshall, Scheffler. Eddie Royal was just like a rookie, I think, that year. So what could have been there? By the way, just real quick, because we're talking about running back. If you guys have a chance, go look at the statistics for rushing yards for the Broncos all time, and a guy who is, I want to say, 6th all time for rushing yards will actually surprise you.
All right, so let's move
Who
on
was
to
it?
big boys.
No Sean
Yeah.
Moreno. No Sean
Sean.
Moreno.
No Sean Moreno. Biggest tears I've ever seen in my life.
Hey, man. Love me some No Sean. And I got to meet No Sean last year at the 104.3 radio station. That was extraordinarily cool. No Sean is a really awesome dude. Got to give my guy No Sean some love.
Yeah. That's cool.
All right, let's move on to the offensive tackles. There is quite a list, but I think there's 2 that stand out over anybody. Ryan Clady's one, Gary Zimmerman is the other, but you also have Eldon Dannenauer, Mike Curran, Claudia Miner, Dave Studdard, Tony Jones, and Matt Lepstein.
There's also Juwan James, Michael Schofield, Tyler Sembrilo. Tyler Columbus, obviously. Gotta give a shout out to Columbus. Billy Turner. Billy Turner.
Coming.
Let's see here.
DeMar Dotson, an underrated one.
Yeah, DeMar Dotson. Bobby Massey deserves some consideration here as well. Jared Valdir, yes. Jared Valdir,
yes.
So his picture, by his viral picture, I still think about Valdir's viral picture where he was in this workout facility and he was a behemoth compared to all these other guys. It was basically the photo that's going around about TJ Watt and Nick Herwig of the Steelers. Watt just dwarfs him. Anyway, okay. You guys can
KB, you that's the one I was trying to think of. Menelik Watson.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's a good one. Ken Booker for the win there.
But to be fair, should we pick a left tackle and a right tackle?
I think I did.
Well, then you eliminate Clady because Gary Zimmerman.
Oh yeah, they were the same, weren't they?
Pull up that last comment. Oh, so good.
All right.
Who would be the choice for right tackle, though?
Juwan James.
I mean, Ken Lanier would be, had over a 10-year career at right tackle. I mean, he had a 13-year career back in the 80s and early 90s. So, I mean, he'd have to be the guy, right?
Sounds like it. I mean, and then when It's so funny because the Broncos have always had such a strong left side of the line.
Yeah.
For me, left guard is also a pretty easy pick in Mark Schlereth. But after that, it's like, okay, right guard. Who is the right guard in the 2 Super Bowl runs?
Hold on.
Part of me almost wants to throw Zane
Dan
Beadles in
Neal.
there.
That's right, Dan Neal. That's right.
Oh.
He ran for Congress, I think, in Texas.
Yeah. I had him listed right here. Boom, Dan Neal.
See, I was always a Zane Beadles guy coming up. I love me some Zane Beadles.
Yeah. So are we on guard now? Or are we
We're
on
just
tackle?
I think we're just going through offensive line at this point.
Okay, so Keith Bishop, Paul Howard for guard.
Okay.
George Gadecki, Tom Glassick, Mark Schlereth, Dan Neal, and Ben Hamilton were the other ones.
Okay.
And then for center, I had Tom Nalen. I don't even think that's debatable.
Not a question, yeah.
I mean, you got to at least consider Matt Paradis, man. I mean,
Yeah.
Hey man,
Jimmy-
love me some Matt Paradis too.
So you mentioned Keith Bishop. He actually has one of the most, if not one of the most famous, if not the most famous quote in Broncos history when they were in the huddle at the 2-yard line before the drive in Cleveland. He said, "We've got him right where we want him," and then they ended up going and tying the ball game on Mark Jackson's catch. But he has been with the team actually as the head of security, vice president of security for the team for years and years.
Well,
so my quick thing in terms of just the overall tackles. Obviously, I was joking earlier about listing all these
No, you
tackles.
weren't.
But I just think that like if the plan is really just to build a all-time team, it's about who are the 2 best tackles in Broncos history, and there were no 2 best tackles in Broncos history than Ryan Clady and Gary Zimmerman. And actually, I think that Quinn Miners is on his. He's not going to be, but I think that Quinn Miners is well on his way to being strongly considered for right guard. In fact, I would venture, this may be a hot take, he's not the best right guard, but I think he would be strongly considered for honorable mention already in one of these guard lists.
could be, man. Dude's already turning into one of those legit franchise cornerstones that is going to be in the Ring of Fame, going to be on these lists of all-time great players. You know, it's yeah.
I mean, I can't remember a more popular second contract in certainly in recent memory than this one. I mean, everybody is just so ecstatic.
Justin.
Yeah, I mean,
We don't speak that name anymore. That hurts too much.
yeah. But Miners is so well liked. I mean, and even just the fact when somebody asked him today if about what big purchase is he looking forward to getting, and he's like, my wife and I are just trying to like process how our lives are basically changing now, or something to that degree. Mike and I got a chance to spend about a half an hour with him one day, and he was just the real deal.
I'm gonna be honest, it was a little awkward when we met him for that, because he was like getting a rub down from Mario, and it was
Is it awkward there?
it was interesting. But
He
it's
was so cool. He was so cool.
just sitting there while your dude's getting his leg rubbed, like whatever. It is what it is. All right, moving into the defensive end. There is Lyle Alzado. There is Rich
Zato.
Jackson.
Come on.
I'll say what I want. You leave me alone. Rulon Jones and Alfred Williams. Those are about it.
Repeat them again. I got so thrown off by you not knowing who Lyle Alzado was.
Alzado, Jackson, Rulon Jones, and Alfred Williams.
Can I pick one who's not on that list?
Absolutely.
Derek Wolfe.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Yep, I got to give Wolfie some love, man. One of my favorite Broncos coming up. The dude was the tandem between him and Von Miller. I mean, the amount of stunts they set up for each other, the amount of double teams Derek Wolfe took on to help get Von Miller free. Derek Wolfe is one of the unsung heroes of the Super Bowl 50 run. I absolutely believe that he deserves to be on that list.
I wouldn't necessarily say he was a dynamic duo with Vaughn. I was going to say he was like a dynamic duo with Malik Jackson there. I mean, he was, but your point still stands. I mean, he was a fan favorite for so many years, like so many years. Obviously, Trevor Price is going to be, one that may actually end up taking the cake here.
It's DT, Trevor Price.
We're talking end right now, but
Yeah,
Derek Wolfe, one of the best guests ever to grace the MHRT network.
That's right.
Wild night that was. Hysterical, but Barney Chavis is another one. Had a 12-year career back in the 70s, 80s. Played for the Orange Crush defense. Rich Jackson, though, I mean, when you think, I think he just had an 88th birthday or something crazy like that. This guy his nickname was Tombstone. I mean, he was cuffing guys in the head, and really is one of those. If he hadn't been injured, people suggest that he would have been a bona fide Hall of Famer. He was a charter member of the Ring of Fame, but he only had a 5-year career in the NFL.
So are we going Alzado and Wolf?
I like the Derek Wolfe one. I think.
Yeah,
I think Tombstone Jackson and Derek Wolfe.
So Jackson instead of Alzado?
I mean, Alzado left us for the Browns and then went and played for the Raiders. So,
Yeah. I think that's I'm fine with that with Rich Jackson and Derek Wolfe. And I think the thing that's so cool looking back on the Derek Wolfe thing is I think that he was a second round draft pick. And I think so much about that draft class to where that was a class where I was so annoyed, and I'm sure I wasn't the only one, but I was so annoyed with that draft class from a Bronco fan's perspective because they kept trading back. They passed on guys like Dante Hightower and Doug Martin and players that I really wanted out of that first round, and they traded out of the first and got Derek Wolfe in the second. And actually, even to make it sweeter, that was don't quote me. I think that was the 2012 draft that set up everything for Super Bowl 50. So it actually ended up being a memorable draft, all things considered, for the Broncos and winning another Super Bowl.
Yep.
All right, let's go to defensive tackle. Trevor Price, Paul Smith, Dave Costa, or Reuben Carter.
How many are we picking here?
You get 2.
Okay. I'm going Trevor Price and Reuben Carter. Again, Reuben was one of those guys, cornerstone on the Denver Crush defense. He actually made the cover of Sports Illustrated, very, very famous cover, memorable one for the Broncos. So I like those two options, Trevor Price and Reuben Carter.
Well, if you're going to go off of name, I was going to say Ma'a Tanabasa, but I think the thing with Trevor Price, and I will say Sports Nonsense brings up a really good point. If we're talking positional value and everything that he could bring, I think that Trevor Price can definitely play some DN for you. But yeah, Trevor Price, man. I mean, he was a great player with both. Didn't he play with the Ravens also? If I'm not mistaken, I think he.
Yes, he did. He left us when he left the Broncos. He went to the Ravens. Cam likes to do his what could have been, but Malik Jackson could be easily on this list. And so he was 2012 to 2015. It said that Jackson and Derek Wolfe were both offered the same 4-year, $36.75 million contract extension after the 2015 season. I'm reading from Mike Kliss's all-time All-Stars Broncos. Wolfe took it while Jackson became a free agent, received a larger contract with Jacksonville. Both Wolf and Jackson had 10-year careers. The difference was that Jackson bounced around playing with 4 teams, while Wolf played 8 of his 10 seasons with the Broncos. And ironically enough, Derek Wolf ended up with the Baltimore Ravens as well.
Yeah. So 2 more names: Sylvester Williams, Neil Smith.
Hot Roast, I think, is another one that deserves to be in the conversation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. At least for
Neil Smith, great one. Oh.
I think
I'm putting Neil Smith.
I'm doing Neil. One, because he's a Husker, but that's beside the point.
But also he was a Chief and then ended up with us.
Yeah.
How many guys
the other way? He wouldn't have been on the list.
You know what? Biggie actually may have a point here. I know we moved away from defensive end, but depending on what you want to do with Elvis Dumerville, you could put him at the end.
I mean,
he was going to be one of my edge rushers. So,
but I'm fine with Price and Neil Smith though at D tackle.
Okay. Linebacker. This is going to be fun. You get 3. Okay. There's Von Miller.
Are we doing inside? Let's do 4.
It's just linebacker. You want to do 4?
Let's do 4. Yeah.
Okay. So Von Miller, Randy Gradishar, Carl Mecklenburg. Then there's Tom Jackson, Bob Swenson, Jim Ryan, Rick Dennison, Simon Fletcher,
Al Wilson,
Michael Brooks. Calm down. Bill Romanowski, John Mobley, Al Wilson, Ian Gold, DJ Williams, Elvis Dumerville. Yeah.
Oh God.
See, I would put Dumerville at like the end, but I think it gets interesting. I think the thing is, like, it's easy to name the 3 for linebacker. It's really easy to name the 3 for linebacker.
Let's do 5. Let's do 5 total if we're doing inside and outside.
We're gonna write a 3.
Think about it. I mean, dude, you didn't even mention DeMarcus Ware, did you? I mean, he was only with the Broncos for a short time, but what do you think he did for Von Miller's career?
That's right.
I mean, are you kidding me? Like,
okay, so we're doing inside and outside?
Yeah.
Yeah, we could do that.
But I'm just saying, like,
how many inside, how many outside?
I would say 2 inside.
2 inside, 2 outside?
3 outside? 2 and 2?
2 and 3. Let's do 2 and 3.
2 and 3.
But I think that there are 3 we know right off the bat, and that would be Von Miller, Randy Gradishar, and Carl Mecklenburg. Just get those out of the way. Those are the 3. We'll talk about those a little bit later. But Vaughn is going to end up being on the outside. I actually would probably put Carl probably on the outside and Randy in the middle, maybe, and then figuring out who would be alongside Randy.
Carl Mecklenburg is a victim of his own success. This guy was a great player. He actually was a 12th round pick in the same draft as Elway and Kubiak back in '83, and he was great at all these different positions. And at the time, like, people were being inducted or nominated for the Hall of Fame, it was really based on success at one position. So his success was at various spots. I mean, essentially every spot outside of the defensive backfield, Carl Mecklenburg excelled. But his statistics in each position were not overwhelming, but his overall stats and impact were, just incredible. I mean, this guy was a phenomenal player. And I'm hoping that at some point the senior committee takes a look at him because, again, another one of those guys that you worry that the further out his career, I mean, he was drafted 41 years ago, right? So it's like, it's tough, But Carl Mecklenburg, like, he could be like the reason we do 5 is because he's just the guy, like the extra guy. Like, we have 2 inside, 2 outside, and Carl Mecklenburg.
Yeah, there's nothing else to add. Carl.
I think I'm going to do that, actually. I'm going to do my 2. I'm going to do Carl Mecklenburg just as Carl Mecklenburg, the hybrid dude. And then I think my edge rushers, I'm going to go Von Miller and Elvis Dumerville. And then what's that?
You get 3 outside, 2 inside.
I get 3 outside? Okay, well, Carl Mecklenburg is going to kind of be my other outside guy, basically. So then Elvis Dumerville, Von Miller, And then for my two inside guys, I'm going to go with Al Wilson and Randy.
That was actually going to be my inside linebacker pair was Al Wilson and Randy Gradishar. Just dreaming about like that pair of Al Wilson and Gradishar together, just absolute tackling machines, and identities of defenses, like, you know, true leaders, you know, of defenses. Like that kind of pair, just it makes you drool getting the chance to kind of dream about something like that. So Al Wilson, I think
Hurts
that
my heart a little bit. No Mobley.
Yeah.
You could. We have John Mobley and Gage is immobile. Anyway, too soon.
That was good.
I'm going with Von Miller and Tom Jackson, Randy Gradishar, Al Wilson, and Carl Mecklenburg.
So you said 3 outside, right?
Yeah, so right now for inside, we've got Gradishar and Al Wilson. Outside is Miller, Doomerville, and Mecklenburg.
Yeah, I can ride with that.
Okay. And you know, Simon Fletcher, KB mentioned him. I mean, this guy was a sacking machine. You know, he recent Ring of Famer, had over 100 sacks, but there's just not enough spots for him to break into the top 5 here.
Should we do secondary as 1, so corners and safeties?
Yeah, we should separate them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got corners and I've got 2 corners. So you're looking Champ Bailey, Lewis Wright. You're looking at Willie Brown, Mike Harden, Ray Crockett, Chris Harris Jr., Aqib Talib. You can also throw in Delta O'Neal, and you can throw in Darren Williams.
What about Nick Ferguson?
Of course. That goes without saying.
This is going to be recency bias on this one, but the 2 corners are Champ Bailey and Pat Surtain.
Ooh, really?
Ooh, spicy.
Just because Pat is so early in his career,
I'm not going to Champ, but
I'm going to pass on Pat. But like, I'm going to go Champ, and I think I got to go Chris Harris Jr. over Louis Wright, which hurts. Jeff Bryan with Tyrone Braxton.
Well, should we do 3 corners then?
We've been so blessed in the
we can do as many as you want.
Because I would do, because then the trio would be Louis, Champ, and PS2.
So I've got Louis and Champ as my 2 outside corners, and I've got CHJ as my nickel.
All right, if we're going with 3, I'll go with Champ, CHJ, and Louis Wright.
Yeah, I'm going with my hot take on, but I got overruled.
Trust me,
PS2 is not a hot take.
No,
I mean, the guy is like, his trajectory is. I mean, he's going to be, if he continues on,
he'll be there.
He's going to be the best. He may be better than Champ. I mean, but it just right now, when you look at the, historically, it's just too hard to include him in the top 3 when he's so young.
It's okay though. The bias is getting ready to come out here on this very next position.
I know what's coming.
Oh yeah, same.
All right, safety. I've got 2 safeties. So Steve Atwater. You got Bill Thompson, Steve Foley, Dennis Smith, Tyrone Braxton, John Lentz, Justin Simmons. You also can add Brian Dawkins.
Yep.
Anybody else you want to add?
I like 3 choices on this one too. I think it's only fair.
Oh man, Steve Foley's so hard to like. That's why I kind of think 3's fair, because Steve Foley is one of those guys that deserves to be there. Obviously, Steve Atwater is the clear-cut number 1, but Justin Simmons, I actually think, has proven in the time that he was with the team that he deserves to be on this list. He's talked about as one of the best safeties of this generation. I have to imagine he's up there in all-time interception leaders for the Denver Broncos. Yeah. I don't have that stat in front of me, but yeah, dude, I think Justin Simmons in his time here definitely deserves to be recognized as one of the top safeties for this team.
Yeah. So my trio.
Well, sorry, I was going to say I'm not exactly sure. I think this list was made in 22, so it's a little off. But as of 2022 season, it was Justin Simmons with 21, Dennis Smith had 30, Steve Foley had 44, and Bill Thompson had 40. So he's got to
way off, dude.
No, it's definitely off. Yeah.
When you think of all the great defensive backs the Broncos have had, and Steve Foley, who hasn't played in nearly 40 seasons, is the leading interception. Steve thought Justin would actually break his record. Let me see what I can find for all-time interceptions, but
I know Justin came close. I don't know if I think he broke Dennis's.
okay, so I do have this. Let's see here. So Steve Foley had 44. Goose Gonsolin had 43. Foley had 150 games. Gonsolin only 94 games for 43 interceptions. Billy Thompson, 40 interceptions. Champ Bailey had 34. Tyrone Braxton, 34. Mike Harden, 33. And Justin Simmons, 30, actually. So Justin was well on his way. I mean, he was only 14 behind, and he's 30 years old. I mean, just
I know, and that's the kind of thing I'm biased there, but like the amount of production that he was able to pack into that Bronco career with the amount of interceptions and turnovers and playmaking, like he in my estimation, he became the second safety in Broncos history. And if we're rolling with three, I'm gonna roll with Dennis Smith, Justin Simmons, and Steve Atwater.
I'm going to go with Steve Atwater, Dennis Smith, and Justin Simmons also. Dennis Smith, one of the hardest hitting players of his generation, and again, served as a mentor for Steve Atwater. Atwater even had, when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame, Dennis Smith introduced him at the ceremony. So that just goes to show you what Dennis Smith's tutelage meant to Steve Atwater in his career. And Justin, I mean, I think it's fair to say, I mean, just amazing guy. I'm seeing like John Lynch and Brian Dawkins, and I mean, those are tough ones, but they didn't play a whole lot of seasons with the Broncos. And even like we're going back to Justin, when you think about how bad some of these teams were that he was a part of, and he was still spectacular, still is spectacular. I mean, I think he's the best safety in the NFL. And quite honestly, like it's been fun to watch him this offseason, spending time with his family, doing vacations, doing all sorts of things. And I mean, the guy looks like he's kept himself in fantastic shape. And he's going to really get his pick of one of the contenders. He's not going to have to sign with
Right.
a crappy team. He's going to be playing for a ring this year. It's going to be pretty awesome.
And then obviously the second easiest one to pick, kicker, Elam.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to say the other names.
Come on, Brandon McAnus, baby.
It's clearly Taylor
Not even on there.
Mussolini. It's clearly
Matt Prater.
No.
Gene Mingo, Jim Turner, and Matt Prater, the only other three.
Guys, it's clearly
Taylor
Taylor
Russolino.
Russolino. Yeah, it's clearly Russolino.
Yes,
Dude,
the greatest
Dude,
Broncos
Jesus
kicker of all time.
himself said to Matt Prater, Matt Prater, we speak your name. Like, he didn't say that to Jason Elam. I mean, granted, it was Jason Sudeikis that said it. But I'm going to go with
It's Mr. Number One.
You got to go with Elam. I mean,
And then how about punter? Anybody know a good punter?
Yeah, Marquette King.
Marquette King.
a good punter. You got Mike Horan. You got Luke Prestrich back in the day. Bucky Diltz back like for the 70s.
Tony Romo would be a good holder. Oh, wait.
The greatest punter of my generation is Britton Colquitt, so that's the guy I'm going to pick.
Yikes.
I'm doing Tom Ruin.
All right, give me a second. Let me.
I don't want to ruin it.
There's Tom Ruin, there's Bob Scarpito, Billy Van Housen, Luke Prestridge, and Mike Horan.
It's going to be Tom Ruin. I mean, local guy, went to Heritage High School in Littleton, punted for the Super Bowl teams. I mean, it's Tom Ruin.
Let's not ruin it. Let's say it's Tom.
Married to Amy Van Dyken.
How about kick returner? I've got Rick Upchurch.
Oh, hands down.
Yeah.
That's good. Cam's going to get for his throwback jersey.
And then coach.
It's clearly Mike
Hackett.
Josh McDaniels.
Yep, Josh McDaniels,
It's
baby.
Jerry Rosburn.
Yeah, Jeff Rosberg.
Honorable mention.
Honorable
One of the
mention.
best conferences of all time came from those Jerry Rosberg pressers, man. He was fantastic.
No, it's Mike Shanahan. I mean, it doesn't need to be said anymore. We've spent ad nauseum obviously talking about Mike, how he needs to be in the Hall of Fame. His systems are being used at ad nauseum in the NFL. He is the best, coach in Broncos history. He, guided them to the back-to-back, champions, Super Bowl champions. Like, yeah, he is the best coach in Broncos history. Obviously, some honorable mentions: Dan Reeves, Gary Kubiak is certainly, in honorable mention.
John Fox, Red Miller.
Yeah. And I mean, and people will hate it, but John Fox is an honorable mention. I mean, like, he was there with Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning carried him. But like, yeah, it's rightful that he would be an honorable mention. Not Jack Del Rio, Mr. Defense Coordinator during that era, but
See, Jeff Bryan is mentioning Dan Reeves, but like Dan Reeves started fighting with John Elway and then wasted a first-round pick on Tommy Maddox just to mess with Elway. That was it for me, quite honestly. But I do want to mention the Mike Klis Denver Broncos all-time All-Stars book that I was referencing tonight, because it does help in this conversation. You think about, oh my God, I forgot about that guy. It's a fun book, and you look at think of how many greats have worn the orange and blue over the years. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So I will make a graphic and put it up on social media of the team that we built. Should be fun. That's a lot of people, though, for God's sake. We're like adding 17 people on defense. That's fine. Anything else that we want to mention before we go?
no, I mean,
Football's back, baby.
Football's back, and for anybody that we did not firmly choose, just know that they still hold a rather soft place in a lot of Broncos country's hearts, and obviously our hearts. So it's no ill will, obviously, on some of these players. We certainly love their impact and what they've been able to do for the team, but you got to pick the best, right? That's what we feel is the best.
Absolute booty cheeks.
So Cam and Gage, like, what days are you guys going to be at Dove Valley, just in case anyone's local and wants to say hey?
Why don't you go ahead and lead, Gage?
So yeah, I'm going to be out there literally every single open practice. I'm not sure exactly where I'm going to be sitting yet. I'll either be in the disabled area because of my leg situation, or I'll be in my usual spot on the berm by the trees. That's where you can most often than not find me during training camp. But yeah, man, I'm really, really excited to be out there every single day. Yeah, yes, with a shirt on, I promise. But we'll be bringing informative, in-depth coverage from camp. We'll be doing videos afterwards, check-in videos. We'll be bringing some video highlights from camp. I'm really, really looking forward to it, guys. Cam, when are you going to be out there?
I will be there not 3 days anymore. I will be there 4 days. Now, I actually found out a fourth day that I'm going to be going. Work has allowed us to do some half days, and I found out that August 9th, the practice will be beginning at noon, and so I'll put in my work shift for the half day, and then I will be going over to camp for August 9th, but I will be there also for July 26th, 27th, and for joint practice day, which will be August 16th. So make sure you annoy me.
I will be there not even once.
Sucks to suck.
Wow. I'm gonna mute your mic right there.
Yeah, unfortunately, I won't be out there this training camp either this year. Unfortunately.
Boo.
Well, this has been a fantastic episode, and when we get into our episodes next week and the week after that, it's training camp time, so we'll have more to talk about. Woohoo! So
I definitely agree, Mike. I
know, right?
agree.
Why are you getting so close to your microphone?
I don't know. I was going to say the same thing about you.
All right. Well, I'm trying not to yell, okay? I'm in a public place, all right? No yelling. But we do appreciate every
Mike's in a fitting room at the Old Navy.
Yeah. It's the Old Navy that closed down. I'm like a squatter in here right now. Fake papers and everything. We do appreciate everybody joining us in the chat today. It has been a lively chat. This is kind of a fun show. I like going back and just picking out all the players that we want. For the Broncos all-time, build a super team. That's what you want to do. Lots of nostalgia in there, right? Like Delta O'Neal. You don't hear that name a lot, but there it was. Make sure you tune into every show that is on the network. We have a lot. I think it's 9 shows now. I'm not going to count because I don't have enough fingers. 9 or 10 shows. I'm missing that one. I stuck it in my nose.
The one show or the one finger?
Yeah, either or. I stuck it in my nose and the booger bit it off. That's what my grandpa used to say all the time. So I'm just going to roll with that.
Just wrap it up.
All right, we're going to wrap it up because I was told to. So we appreciate you. We love you. We love the Broncos. We love Broncos country. We'll see you guys later. Peace out.
Fast lane when I pass in the street. Bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down cause the coast's racking up the flight miles. So high, I might never